I hate that really high pitched sales. This is a better way to do it, just as effective, and allows us to be able to effectively get that information across. I also want to make sure that every time that I am speaking on something, I am giving some level of value. I think it was 20 years ago, we learned that there are.
Welcome to the Perpetual Growth Podcast, where we explore the strategies, insights, and stories that empower you to grow your business, deepen your relationships, and elevate your health. Because growth isn't just about what you achieve, it's about who you become along the way. I'm your host, Zach Palmer, and today's episode is going to hit especially hard for those of you looking to own the stage, sharpen your message, or build a platform that gets you remembered. My guest today is Andrew Chesnutt, CEO of the Authority Forge. He's a master of turning complexity into clarity, helping entrepreneurs craft signature keynotes and launch podcasts that position them as the go-to experts in their industry. Whether you're an established business owner, a consultant ready to scale your voice, or someone whose story has been stuck inside for far too long, this conversation will give you the tools and the permission to step into that next level of authority. Let's get into it. Welcome to the podcast, my friend. Andrew, it's great to have you here today.
Zach, awesome to be here today. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. I'm excited to have you. Now, Andrew, as my guests know, I like to start with this question because I think it reveals a lot about who someone really is, or at least this stage or season of life. What does growth mean to you right now?
I probably have an answer that's different than most other people will. Growth means freedom for me. So for me, what I do is not always about the money. There's two things I want to get out of business. Now, the money is a good part of it, but the money allows me to be able to do other things. And there's two parts of that. The first thing is to serve others.
Hmm.
The money will allow me, if you're worrying about money, it's hard to serve others. If I have the money coming, then I can actually go out and serve others. And the second part is just really cool adventures. I'm one of those people that loves to go out on adventures and do those really cool things. Like I want to try skydiving next year and stuff like that,
Yeah.
it allows me to do that. So as far as growth allows me the opportunity to reach those goals that I want, including things like, again, helping is a big one. Yeah.
Cool. No, that's amazing. I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, we can never serve from a place of scarcity.
Yes.
And I've been reading a bit more of Byron Katie's work. I don't know if you've read much of her stuff recently. There's a lot of parallels with my old mentor Tony Robbins, but I love what she talks about, and I'm just framing some simple questions to bring us back to that place of presence in the moment. And when you really think about it, in the here and the now, we never really need anything. We might think that we need more money, or that we need the attention of the significant other or the love of the life, or that we need to be healthier. But here, now, in this moment, we have everything that we need.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a beautiful balance. I love that you have relative to growth and what it means to you. And skydiving, by the way, dude, was like amazing.
Oh, it's awesome.
That
There's
was
so many things I want to do. I'm an
probably one
adrenaline
of the most
junkie.
euphoric experiences of my life. I mean, it was ecstasy. It was absolutely incredible. I want to get certified. Yeah. What are some of you talk about service. What are some of the things that you're working toward? Where do you want to be able to put those time and energy and resources? What speaks to you right now?
Biggest goal that I have right now, this is my big ass hairy goal, is that I want to help 100,000 entrepreneurs to be able to find their voice, get onto stages, and get that wisdom that they have inside their heads out.
Mm.
And I started this goal because I really wanted. I was somebody who grew up without really being heard, and I felt like I was kind of invisible in that. And it started this path of wanting to help people find that voice. So many people are too scared to be on stages. They don't know how to structure something properly. They try to do it, and it's not quite the right way. I want to help people to be able to go out, not have to think about what they're going to say on stage. They just say it and then be able to touch as many lives as possible. And that's really where I come from as far as that is concerned. So that's really what I want to do, is to help 100,000 people to be able to go out and spread that amazing wisdom that they have.
Yeah, that's a beautiful gift. And there's something that you said that is so, so very important. I think a lot of people are under the illusion or delusion that
Either one of
a
the two.
great speaker is
Yeah.
just this person that was born. It's like, Tony or Dean or Brennan Burchard, any one of a million different names of these prolific speakers or orators. They just step on a stage and they're gifted because they've got the tonality and the flow, and it
Mhm.
all just happened. Where the reality is, there's an art and a science. And
Yes.
all of that was perfected over time. They know what to say, when to say it, how to leverage the power of their body language, when to anchor with an appropriate pause or
Mhm.
drop in
Yes.
tonality. So what I would love is, I think what's beautiful about this is people understanding that there is both an art and a science, and it's not just some innate gift. I mean, of course, that always helps, but when we were able to apply certain frameworks to things, it can exponentially empower your messaging. And I
Yes.
think what's beautiful about this is also not it's not just going to show up in not just going to show up on the stage, but this will show up in your professional life. You know, whether you're in front of a boardroom, whether you're leading your team, whether you're announcing to the company the next greatest adventure, the product or service launch, whether you're having a conversation with your family. If you
Mhm.
can structure the presentation properly, you're more likely to get adaptation, adoption of those concepts and ideas. So, what are some of the things? Talk a little bit about the art and the science. You know, where do people need to start? What are maybe some of the questions they need to start asking themselves in order to determine if, hey, they're prepared, if they're as effective as they could be? You know, how do
Yeah.
they determine if they've got some leaks in an already partially full bucket versus somebody that
Mhm.
maybe hasn't started yet?
So let me start off with a concept that I call visual junk food. And
Hmm.
this is something that it's the greatest way for me to see an ideal client is when I see a slide full of bullet points. So
Yeah.
we've all been there, death by PowerPoint.
Yeah.
It's a technique that people use because they feel like they either need to give a huge amount of value
Yeah.
or they feel they need the training wheels to be able to say, these are the things I need to say on this slide. Those are two general reasons why I see people do it. But the problem is that when you're on stage and you have a line full of bullet points, what ends up happening is people's language processing centers kick in. They're reading those bullet points. They're not listening to you. They zone
Hmm.
out and they're not going to retain any of that information. My grandfather had a great saying. He said, I just asked for a glass of water. You don't have to turn the hose on me. You know, and it's really what you're doing when you're doing that, or just scrambled, visuals that don't quite match up, or things that look
Yeah.
like it was done by a teenage. Though I respect the fact that somebody would get up there and just they're trying. I will always respect somebody just trying it, even if you're screwing it up. I've screwed up things way more times than I wish to admit to, and I've done it a
Mhm.
lot, but I think that it makes it hard to get your message across. You're not working with your audience. You're working with what you perceive your audience needs, which could be very different than what they actually want. Ford had
Mhm.
a really great saying, and he said that if I asked people what they wanted, they would say a better horse. They didn't
Mhm.
understand that they needed something else from that. So, anyway, just a
Mhm.
thought on it. But
Mhm.
that's the first thing I've seen is that visual junk food. Structure is a big one as well. And I have a really specific way that I do a structure. And so the first thing I'll do is a hook. I
Mhm.
want to ask a question that is going to get my audience to say, huh, I want to hear some more. That is just really quick question, really quick, bold statement, just something in that beginning that hooks them in. It works just like an ad does, maybe in a little bit longer way, but get them hooked in at first. Then I'll go into like a background, like who am I and why am I here? What have I learned? I'm going to take you through this path. Like
Mhm.
here's what I have learned so far, and I do it via stories. Stories are the most powerful, underrated tool out there. So a well-told story um, does a bunch of things. About I think it was 20 years ago, we learned that there are brain cells inside of our brain that cover most of our brain. So it's really deeply embedded that are triggered by emotion. And so what ends up happening is when that and stories trigger emotion. So what ends up happening is we get this moment where you absolutely light up every part of an audience's brain. They now know, like, and trust you because they've heard this story. The personal stories are the ones that work the best. Being a little vulnerable, being authentic on stage works the best. And
Mhm.
now it's a lot easier to sell because now
Mhm.
they like you. Now they know you. And it's not, the reason I started this is because I didn't want people who were like sleazy used car salesmen. I hate those things where it's go to the back of the room and sign up now. I hate that stuff. I hate that really high pitched sales. This is a better way to do it, just as effective, and allows us to be able to effectively get that information across without having to resort to beating them over the head and dragging them home.
Right, right.
Tactics
Yeah,
on it.
yeah.
So that's the general framework. I also want to make sure that every time that I am speaking on something, I am giving some level of value,
Mm,
something that the audience can take an action item, because every time they implement that action item, they're going to be thinking about you.
mm. Yeah, yeah. No, that's 100% true. You know, a couple things come to mind. The very last thing that you said is something not to be overlooked. Well, actually, no part of what you just said is to be overlooked, but the last part is resonating with me from a story standpoint because it takes me back to the very first time that I got invited to speak professionally.
Yeah,
And, I was like most people. I mean, I was mortified to speak in front of a classroom, let alone get on a stage. I mean, I still today question how I ever said yes to that opportunity because I'm up there like, radioactive red, my hands shaking, sweat's pouring down my face. But I got done, and I will never forget the look of the people's faces around the room. Mouths are half open, like, whoa, that was incredible information. But when
mhm,
it really hit was the following days and weeks, because it
yep,
was a wellness program that we did for the company next door. And I would run into people every day, and they're like, hey, I took this tip you implemented, and now I'm feeling like this, or I've had this gain or this improvement in my life and well being. And all of a sudden, it started to shift my mindset around the power of speaking and story and the ability to influence. And I'm like, man, if I did do this to this small group and had this tremendous of an impact, what would it look like? How many more people could I help and serve?
exactly.
What would that do for me? So I really want to edify what you just said there. And I also want to go back to one other thing you said. So, I mean, you talked about, the importance of a hook
Hmm. Yeah.
is I think one of the steps that most people overlook. You
Hmm.
need that immediate thing to compel and grab people's attention and draw them in. And
Yep.
then you talk about background and
Hmm.
leveraging the power of story. And you said two words that I love: authenticity and vulnerability.
Yep.
I firmly believe that vulnerability is a superpower in life
Yes.
and business, and it's not something that's exercised enough, and particularly among the male ego. So,
Hmm.
we've got really unique opportunities to set a new and healthy standard. But
Yeah.
there was one specific thing that you said that I think was really interesting, which you said, if I heard you correctly, you said you actually want people to get familiar with your stories,
Yes.
which I would
Absolutely.
actually, and I'm super excited to hear you say this because I would think that, I know it's crossed my mind at times. I'm talking on the podcast, I'm thinking, shoot, I've talked about this story before. But if I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like there's actually power in that repetition because people get the familiarity and
Yeah.
they start to talk a little bit more about that value and what it does for people. Because I think this is a really powerful lesson.
So somebody that I know is a branding expert. She's worked with Fortune 50 companies and helped to build their brands. And one of the things she says is you're not selling your option. She talks about cars. She says cars aren't sold on options. That's not their
Commodity.
thing.
Hmm.
Because what's going to happen is if Toyota has one option that's really cool, well, great. Hyundai is going to have it shortly after.
Hmm.
So selling yourself an option, selling yourself on these are the benefits that I have.
Hmm.
Yes, showing benefit is good. Showing benefit means here's the things you're going to get, here's the deliverables you're going to get, but your business isn't always about deliverables.
Hmm.
There are tons of speaker coaches out there. I am not unique. I
Hmm.
am doing my own version of something. It's after a lot of research. I've spent a lot of time on it, but there's a lot of other people that do what I do. What I want people to say is, I don't want them to say, I need a keynote. I want them to say, I want Andrew to do my keynote for me.
Hmm.
And by having those stories, and I'll go into a story a little bit here in a moment about how I got started, by telling these stories, you're bonding with somebody. And when I say vulnerability, I want to be clear about it. It's not like you're going to trauma dump on your entire audience.
Right.
You're not
That's an
going away.
important distinction too. Yeah, thank you.
You know?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
it is it's being able to tell those stories, even those stories of things, hey, I screwed this up. Here's what I learned. Let's go forward. A lot of people are hesitant to do that because they think, well, if I screwed it up, I'm not good at business. I'm going to be honest. I have learned more from the times I've messed up than I have from the times I've done it right.
Exponentially.
I have a friend.
Yeah,
I have a friend of mine that says, the only one of the things he told me once is that a mistake is another word for learn. I mean,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
really what it is.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
we're
100%.
entrepreneurs. We're
100%.
entrepreneurs. But for me, it's like my background is I could remember many years ago, and this is kind of my backstory. Is I many years ago, I was a corporate trainer and I was working for a pharmaceutical manufacturer. So they made blood glucose testing, and I was doing an FDA compliance training. What happens in a regulated industry is you have to have some sort of a remediation course. So if somebody does something wrong, we have to take them back through these courses to be able to say, okay, now this is the right way to do it. And I was handed this specification document, which is basically here's everything that has to show up in this course. And this thing was a 20-page beast of bullet points. It was awful. And I could tell my boss's boss, her boss, and like four compliance lawyers wrote this thing because they had included everything. It was the worst piece of training I've ever seen in my life. So I'm the one who has to put this thing together. So it takes me weeks, 164 slides, almost a 2 hour delivery time.
Holy bananas. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm a really good trainer, and there was nothing I could have done to make that better.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
everything in that specification doc had to be inside of this training. So of course, the day that I'm ready with this thing, the FDA auditor is in the office and he wants to see it. So I walk into the conference room where he's all set up, and there's, I'm at one end of this conference room table, and he's at the other end of it, and there's like a whole bunch of people with initials in their titles around the side waiting for
Mhm.
this audit. And I hand him this beast. This was in the days before we just emailed something to someone, so it
Mhm.
was this thud right in front of him, and he reads through it. And after an agonizing few minutes, he looks up, takes off his glasses, and says, "Is this meant to help them or is this meant to punish them?" And after a really brief cardiac event,
Yeah, yeah, right.
I came up with some I don't even remember what the hell I said at that point, just something to get myself out of that moment. And I made a point of never, ever, ever being in that situation again. I never wanted to commit academic assault, which is essentially
Yeah.
what this thing was.
Yeah.
So fast forward a number of years, I started on with somebody. I had been to a bunch of real estate investor association meetings, and I was because I knew real estate. No matter who you were, real estate was the common denominator for those that were wealthy, and it
Hmm.
had always fascinated me and how it works. And it's an interesting industry.
Hmm.
So I had been to a bunch of real estate meetings. All of them pitch slapped me. It was always buy this, buy this, buy this. Never wanted that. No, I just want to learn, and that's my main goal right now. I'm probably not going to buy what you have,
Yeah.
except one. A man named Chris had this. It was the only one where I felt like I actually had value being given, where I wasn't being pitched something, where it wasn't like, "Hey, come buy my course." It's more, I want to show you how to do this and how I've accomplished. He had done 250 flips at the time and had a show on HD. It was piloting a show on HDTV.
Hmm.
And I can remember I walked in, met a couple of people, told them what I was doing because I had just started my business at this point, and I was in the online learning industry. I've been on online learning almost 20 years at this point. Or sorry, at that point, 10 years. Now I've been on it 20. And I get in there and I start talking and I tell them what I'm doing. And I'm trying to start this business creating online courses. And one of these guys knows something about Chris and says, "You need to meet Chris," and hooks us up. So I tell him a little bit about what I do. I tell him I'm an instructional designer. Now it's loud, there's background noise, and Chris is going in a million directions. So I said instructional designer, which is my actual title of what I do. He heard structural designer and had a bunch of flips, two of which had bad foundations, and he badly needed an engineer. That misunderstanding got me breakfast the next morning where he actually explained what I did. So now he had an education side to his company.
Uh-huh.
So the show was just I'm trying to I think it was 2 months from piloting. And then there was an education arm that was going to happen where we trained people how to flip houses and stuff like that. And that was the goal for the company. Get to the point of the show airing. It's ready to go, almost greenlit. Discovery buys HDTV, says no new shows, and we pivot.
Oh, dude.
Years of work on his part, 4 years of work on his part, done. Like
Wow.
finished. And we have to make a massive pivot. And I remember that day and him showing up in my office door because at this point I had an office in the company or in the facility where he was. And I have never seen anyone kicked in the gut that badly before. That was a day. I will remember the look on his face for the rest of my life. It was over almost 10 years ago at this point, and I still remember that look.
Wow.
So we pivoted
Yeah.
to life insurance.
That's a
Uh,
big pivot.
he had
Night
been
and
doing this
day.
for years and years. And the problem I ran into though is that the type of life insurance we were doing is called infinite banking, where I don't care about the death benefit. I'm using a cash value as an advance on that death benefit. I can use it while I'm living, basically,
Mm,
just
mm,
super high level of what it is.
mm-hmm,
Nobody knows what the hell we did though.
mm.
That was one of the biggest issues we ran into is it was hard to teach this because it was so far outside most people's experiences that they couldn't understand it. They couldn't wrap their head. It's like I have this insurance policy, this life insurance policy, but I don't care about the death benefit. Well, okay, great. What happens is cognitive dissonance. Your brain calls BS because it doesn't make sense.
Right.
I can borrow the money out of it, but I'm still earning interest on every penny I put into it. Well, okay, brain calls BS. There's a whole
Yeah.
bunch of parts that don't make sense. When you know the system, they make sense, but you don't. And so the first thing we did was created a presentation. And he already had a mentor who helped build this first, who had already been using a presentation. So I went through and revamped it. And we rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed. It took weeks of rehearsing to get this right, get all the cadences right, get everything together. I can remember 9 o'clock p.m. in our event center. He's standing on stage. I'm in a chair somewhere, and we're working and working and working and working this thing.
Mm.
Ended up building a seven-figure company, mid-seven-figure company based on that one presentation. And I realized I'm really good at this. I love doing it, and I really love working with entrepreneurs. And this is one of those situations where I'm not going to have a whole bunch of people from on top telling me what I have to do. I have an entrepreneur and their amazing vision of what they want to accomplish, and I can help them accomplish that.
Yeah.
And so 8 years I've been building that. I've done a couple of TED Talks. It helped me to be able to get, to help entrepreneurs to be able to spread that wisdom. So I found my sweet spot.
Yeah.
The learning industry, I'm really, really good about being able to take all of this high level information and break it down so that mere mortals can understand it. I had a conversation with Chris one day. He was frustrated. He's like, why aren't people getting this? And I had to tell him, I'm like, look, bud, you have been doing this for 15 years as a financial advisor. You can jump from A to F in a single bound, and that's super easy. That's super easy for you. Most of the rest of us have to do B, C, D, and E. We have to
Hmm.
fill in those blanks. As an education professional, I'm really good at finding those blanks, knowing how people's brain process information, and helping them to be able to see those blind spots and fill them in.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it really, it was something that presentations, that's what you do, going out, trying to sell, trying to get people to understand what you're doing with a story behind it and mix all of that together, and I came up with this structure to be able to do it. And so, yeah, fast forward to today, I've also moved on to podcasts because I
Okay.
love the fact that doing a keynote is more the teaching side of things. Podcast is more, I want to be a fly on the wall and listen to you talk so I can understand you. It also adds on what I call authority by proximity. If I get
Mm.
onto podcast with a really smart person like Zach Palmer, I can then kind of pull from that authority that you already have to be able to kind of get mine and vice versa. So it's a really great way to be able to build that authority too. So I figured this is what I wanted to do. And yeah, I'm doing it full time now. This is my number one thing that I focus on, and I nerd out to this stuff.
I love it. I mean, there's so much to unpack here. I want to go way
Yeah,
back to your
sure.
first story.
Yeah, man.
About the how many pages did you say it was? Like 1,200, 200 something pages. It was a
It was about
ridiculous
20
amount of
pages just of bullet points, and it was 164 slides.
Dude,
It was
I can
awful.
imagine that. I'm like, what I'm imagining is if I set that in front of Dean or Tony and they would look at me and like it'd be like, what?
Yeah, no,
Never gonna happen in
no.
your freaking life. Well, and it takes you back to something that almost everybody can relate to. I mean, maybe you've never seen a speaker, but we've all seen a teacher. And you
Yes.
can think about like I think about this all the time. You have the teachers that absolutely bored you to death, where you're like, is this class ever going to end? And then
Mhm.
you had the ones where you're like, wow, where did the last 3 hours go? I mean, it was
Yep.
amazing. And it took me a long time to realize this, but I firmly believe that the biggest thing that differentiates one from the other, a great teacher from a great orator, somebody that really can grab your attention as well as help you to understand and disseminate the information, is somebody that knows how to leverage the power of story. It's
Yep.
one thing to get up and be a clinician and teach all the strategy and the tactics. It's a whole nother thing to use stories, anecdotes, metaphors to help set up the teaching point so that people can actually conceptualize it before you get into the technicalities. So I'm curious, like about a couple of things. If you were to walk into that same room now and they
Mhm.
said, "Here's what we need you to create," what would be the conversation that you would have with them in terms of getting them to adopt the idea that, hey, we need to one chunk this down and reformat it in a way that is actually going to compel people to listen. And then what would that look like? I know that when I'm consulting with clients, like from a sales strategy standpoint, I look at it in blocks. And a lot of ways I'll break up those blocks, A, with story, and then B, with properly engaging the client. So it's not just me standing up there and giving a monologue. And I don't
Yeah.
think about it strategically anymore. I'm very conversational. I just love people. So I mean, it's like I don't think sales is sales, but nonetheless, those are some of the things we do so that it feels more dynamic and you stay engaged throughout the process. What would you do in those scenarios? Like, what's a high level of how you set up that content strategy? How might you tell somebody, hey, this is never going to work?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
talk a little bit about what that looks like from your side of the table.
Yeah, if I had to go back to that FDA compliance training, there's probably two ways that I would go about it. The first one would require this episode to be marked as explicit, but the second one, I would have some strong words for it. But
Yeah.
the other side of it too is that sitting down and just going, there is not a snowball's chance in hell anyone will digest this information. This is check a box training, period.
Yeah. Mhm.
It is academic assault. There's nothing that would have happened that was going to help. This was 100% just we need to cover ourselves and that's it.
Yeah.
So I want to parlay that into what the entrepreneurs do, though, is that we're brilliant at what we do. We can think in a million directions. We have a lot of very good ideas. And one of the things is we want to give a huge amount of value. And I applaud that. I think it's an excellent goal. I think it's something that we should try to achieve. If you try to give too much information, or you're
Mhm.
giving too much high level information, you're not making yourself look smarter. You're not giving value. You are fire hosing your audience.
Mhm. Mhm.
So break it down into small bite-sized chunks that they can take away. I like to do like sentences and then highlight a word or two in them just
Mhm.
so that they can take those little bits and pieces away. Because when they think about you, I don't want them to think about your entire process. I want them to think about the guy that does blank, like a real short sound bites.
Mhm.
Because they'll walk away with sound bites, and our brains will remember sound bites very easily. It's especially if it's involved in a story. Listen to how Dean Graziosi or Tony
Mhm.
Robbins or any of the Ed Milet. I love. He's a very
Mhm.
good speaker. And think
Mhm.
about any of the good speakers. They have sound bites that
Mhm.
you can take away with it. That's how your brain processes information. Make sure that even in a sales presentation, you're doing that so people will remember it.
hmm
Yeah.
Now, sound bites, like nuggets, right? Those
Yeah.
little bits of memorable wisdom, the phrases, the saying, the thing that's going to stick.
Yep, I call them pre-recorded scripts, and
Yeah,
we use them
yeah,
like we used them when we did money school. It was the specially designed and engineered whole life insurance policy.
yeah,
This one was a longer one, but it let people know this is what it is.
yeah.
This is not just standard life insurance. There's something else we do to it.
Oh,
There's things
that
to
that's
it.
really important that you just said that too. And I think this is something that gets overlooked is we always have to pre-frame. We have to set the intention, the focus point of each of those topics. So
Mhm.
if you're not setting that standard and expectation and clarifying what people are listening to and why they should listen,
Mhm.
before going into the rest of the story,
Yeah.
they're not likely to listen. It's like watch it going to a movie without ever having seen any of the previews. I mean, you
Mhm.
have no idea what you're getting into, right? And it
Yeah.
doesn't really compel you. That's a really, really great takeaway. And another thing I'm curious about too is now moving back to you when you were helping. I forgot the gentleman's name. It was Chris now, I believe.
Yeah.
Chris helped prepare for that speech after the pivot. And you
Mhm.
talked about there was weeks of preparation that went into
Yeah.
this. I think this is
Yeah.
another thing that needs to be emphasized is, a great speaker doesn't just get up and do the thing.
Yeah.
Like, like anybody else, we practice how you play. You're rewarded in public for the work that you do in private, right?
Yes.
So
Very
we
true.
have to write the script, but
Mhm.
then we have to become familiar with it.
Yeah.
You have to exercise it until, just like any muscle, you can deliver it without thought. And it
Yeah.
allows you to get into flow and literally leverage
Yep.
the power of tonality and be present
Yep.
with the audience so you can see what they're reacting, how they're reacting. Do you need to pick up the energy and tempo? Do you need to slow it down? Do you need to
Mhm.
ask some questions?
Yeah.
What how do you encourage your clients to go through that process? Is it days? Is it weeks? Is it rehearse, like rote memorization? Are they recording themselves and watching it playback, watching their game film? Like, what
Mhm.
is that what does that part of the process look like for you? And maybe there's a tip that can help people prepare as they're listening for, something that's coming up for them.
Yep. So what I do with all of my clients is I'll have them rehearse it by themselves a couple times just to get familiar with it. I don't ever do rote memorization unless I'm doing a TED talk. TED
Mm.
Talks are memorized.
Hmm.
But beyond that, I give them a script so they can see the flow of how it's going to work. But then in the notes in a PowerPoint, I'll put, here's the bullet points you have to hit in this one part. So that way then they understand kind of, this slide, here's what you have to hit. This slide, here's what you have to hit. Most really good speakers or presenters will do it that way.
Hmm.
Just means that now I can focus on engaging with the audience. Like you said, slowing
Hmm.
up, speeding up, slowing down,
Hmm.
kind of engaging, making sure I'm asking questions if it's the appropriate audience and I have time
Hmm.
for it. And then after they've gone through and kind of done a couple of rehearsals, I have them record on Zoom alone,
Hmm.
and then send me the recording, and I will go through and give feedback on it. And what I do it through Loom, and I can put my head in a little circle and basically comment as we go through, saying, here are the notes that I have. Here's where we can work on this. Here's some other things. We go back and forth a couple times to make that work. Honestly,
And I'm guessing, you've probably got them like sitting in a chair. It's a dark room. The audio is terrible.
Mhm.
What are
Oh
right?
yeah, it's show up however you are. I mean, this is a rehearsal for us, so
No, but but
just go through it.
I was saying it somewhat flippantly because it's one of these things that I've learned is,
Yeah,
like people tend to want to sit down because they think they'll be more comfortable. But I'm like, where's your energy go when you sit?
I'm
Into the
standing right
floor.
now. I got a standing
Exactly.
desk.
I have to stand. If I don't, it's a completely different conversation. And I'm very animated when I talk, so I got to watch out for hitting my microphone and everything else. But
Speak
my
Italian.
energy, yeah, exactly. I know. I think I've been too much time with Italians, literally. But your energy goes up when you stand up.
Yeah.
And lighting becomes so very important. A lot of these things are going to be taken care of for you in a public
Mhm.
presentation,
Yeah.
but in a virtual world, I think these are little things that it can be easy to overlook and
Mhm.
are really, really important. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Um, I I wanted to start wrapping up today with a little bonus insight that Andrew dropped during a little off mic chat, and I wanted to bring it here. So he said, "Your story isn't just worth telling;
Yeah.
it's the bridge to every door you're trying to open."
Mhm.
And so many entrepreneurs try to scale by adding more funnels, more tactics, more content. But sometimes the unlock isn't volume; it's voice.
Yeah.
And if you're not getting the traction you want, you need to ask yourself, have I owned my story yet? Or am I still hiding behind the information instead of inspiration? That question alone can shift everything. And Andrew, you're so full of these wisdom and nuggets. I mean, 20 years with your focus in this particular area, it allows you to anticipate some of the challenges that people are going to experience. And I think what's critical is, and I kind of slid this in earlier, but I want everybody to hear that this isn't just for professional speakers.
Yeah.
It's not just for professional podcasters. If you are a business professional or
Mhm.
anyone that has a message that you need to deliver in the home or in the workplace,
Mhm.
developing a proper or a crafted message and learning how to deliver it in a way that compels and engages people is really important. If you had, one, I don't know if you can come up with one. I mean, when people ask me for one, I'm like 1,000. What
Yeah, right.
if you had one like critical tip or question or insight or
One
something
life
that,
experience.
yeah,
One
what
experience that
would
you can
that would
share to
be?
others.
Yes.
Is the way that I like to do business. I actually have this shirt. It says I do cool stuff with my friends. We'll go with stuff. We don't want that E rating.
Yeah.
But, I got it from a friend of mine, and that's his entire thing. Is just that it's all about vibe. It's
Yeah.
all about kind of let's go do some cool stuff and change the world together. And I think as entrepreneurs, we have the ability to positively impact the world because we have a very low risk. We have a very high risk tolerance. We're
Hmm.
the ones that reject your reality. I substitute my own. I want to go do this thing. We also have a very unique life path that we've taken. We have a lot of life experiences that we've taken, and by using those life experiences to be able to explain what we do and why we do it, then that is a really powerful force for good. And being able to enter that, to be able to put that into not just your keynotes, but also podcasts and being able to go on into the various other modalities, books, anything else out there to get your name out is, I think, really it's a powerful force, and we need to use it more often.
Yeah. No, I wholeheartedly agree. I think another thing to emphasize too, as you're talking, one thing that popped into my mind is
Mhm.
I could hear people thinking or saying, I haven't done that much in my life, or I haven't had any, major earth-shattering events. I haven't lost any friends or family members. There's nothing. Everybody has a freaking story.
Oh yeah.
We've all
Yeah.
been through something unique. And usually what you're doing when you're telling yourself a story like that, and ironically, that's what you're doing is telling yourself a story, is you are comparing yourself to somebody else.
Yeah.
And because somebody's been through some huge traumatic thing, that doesn't mean you don't have a message, that you don't have experiences that other people are going to relate to. And I think that's the biggest thing is what we're doing is creating relatability, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And we can do it in an authentic way. I mean, there's a few things I took away from you today, and well, okay, more than a few, a lot. But
Thank
like,
you.
I love your idea of concept of visual junk food.
Yeah.
I like the simple framework that you talk about. It's like we got to have a compelling hook. Ask a question
Mhm.
to get people to want to hear more.
Yeah.
And sometimes we can antagonize them a little bit in a positive way, right? Like you say
Yeah.
something that gets people to go, "Whoa!" It's a little bit of the shock and awe, and give them your background. Like, here's
Mhm.
what I've learned, and here's what the outcome will be. And the most powerful way to do it is through the power of story because they trigger emotion. And you talked
Yes.
about the importance of authenticity and vulnerability, and then always giving value. Like
Mhm.
they have to have an action item, something they can take away and apply. Otherwise, you might deliver something that's compelling, but the thing that keeps them coming back is when I think you said repeating that thing that you taught. And
Mhm.
now it's anchoring, Andrew taught me this. Andrew
Yep.
taught me this.
It was
And a
like you were
lot of
saying,
those
yeah,
clients, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
No,
I
exactly like
love
you were
that.
saying with that, with teaching a course, going out teaching them one thing, and then people coming back to you weeks later and saying, hey, you taught me this thing. If you give value to somebody, they're now going to know, like, and trust you because you've given them value. Podcasts are a really great way to do this, by the way.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
something that I use, and I love this technique where what I'll do is if I want to create a relationship with somebody, the first thing I'll do is have them on the podcast.
yeah,
And
yeah,
what it does is it gives value. I'm now
yeah.
giving them exposure. I'm now putting them into a situation where they can, in a conversational way, talk about what they do. So keynotes are more for the formal on-stage talking. You can still get rapport with your audience. Podcasts have a different world or a different tone to them, where they're more about conversation. They're more about let's have a chat, setting a fly on the wall. I said this earlier on in the podcast, where
Mhm.
we have this ability to hear the human side of people versus
Yeah,
just a speaker talking from stage.
yeah.
There's a back and forth behind it. You get a much clearer view of who that person is. Using the two of those in combination, and this is why I've added podcasts onto my company, is using the two of them in combination is a faster way to build authority, and you're doing it in two different ways.
Mm.
And so I think that there's a powerful thing there too. And a lot of times you'll hear different stories on podcasts. Like you will hear different stories on podcasts than you would if I when I'm on them versus speaking.
Oh yeah.
I use
Hmm.
different stories. And sometimes
Hmm.
you get a random story that nobody's heard before. Occasionally that happens.
Yeah, I know. I'm ADD, Andrew. I know that
Oh,
very
we
much
all
how
are.
that could go. I'm like, right, yeah, I know. I
Every
think,
entrepreneur, every
right?
single entrepreneur I know is ADHD. And the
At
thing is,
least I've come to
our
believe it's a
power.
superpower. Yes,
It is our
exactly.
superpower. We
Yeah,
can think in a thousand directions at
yeah,
once.
yeah,
We're super smart. We can
yeah,
go down these rabbit holes. So when people think attention deficit, no, we have hyper focus. We'll get
yeah,
really focused on one thing for a long time and go down every
yeah,
rabbit hole of every rabbit hole.
yeah,
That was one
yeah,
of the reasons why I did a done for you service, though, is it's hard
yeah.
for us to get
Mhm.
all of that information out into a way that other people can understand. And
Mhm.
oftentimes we need to have somebody come back and just step back and say, okay, let's make sure that happens. Let's
Yeah.
make sure we get all of that out.
Oh,
And
I love this, Andrew. What I want to do is in just a second give you an opportunity to share how our listeners can get in touch with you to
sure,
get that kind of support. Because
sure,
what you
sure.
just said is so, so very important. We tend to think we need to do it ourselves. And
Mhm.
while Chat GPT and AI and all these things are good, they are not good enough for this purpose or strategy yet. I
True.
can tell you that this is something, an art and a science that people have not yet learned, and it's
Yep.
not going to be able to give you as effective a feedback as a professional speaker and orator. So,
Correct.
to all of our listeners today, I want to thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of the Perpetual Growth Podcast. If this conversation with Andrew got your wheels turning or helped you see your voice, your message, your leadership in a new way, make sure you let us know. And
Mhm.
if you're sitting here thinking like, man, I could really use some coaching, some
Mhm.
structure. I want to be able to up level my speaking, my impact, whether it's on the stage, in the office, in the boardroom, or at home. Make sure you guys reach out to Andrew. Andrew, what's the best place for our listeners to reach out and get in touch if they would like to hear more from you?
Best thing to do is go onto my website, theauthorityforge.com. You can also check me out on all the socials. So I am on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Best place. Those are the best places to get a hold of me. You could also get a hold of me personally on those. My last name is spelled Chesnutt because my family was slightly sadistic and wanted to see who the detail-oriented people in their lives were.
So true, dude. That's an important distinction, guys. Chestnut, Chesnutt,
That is
not
correct.
the conventional spelling of the actual chestnut. So make sure that you spell that correctly. And again, theauthorityforge.com, or find Andrew on any one of the social sites. If this episode struck a note for you, make sure you guys screenshot this episode, tag me and Andrew. Tell us about your biggest insight. And if you're looking for support in clarifying your message or building the platform to deliver it, check out the Authority Forge. Andrew is obviously the real deal. Now, as always, keep growing, keep leading, and remember, growth doesn't happen by chance, it happens by choice. We'll see you next time.